And well, joining me to talk more about this from Sonipat, Haryana is Dr. Sreeram Chaulia. He's a professor and dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs and executive director of the Center for Global Governance and Policy. Thanks so much, Dr. Chaulia, for speaking to us here. My first question to you is straight up. Do you think that the statement that the BRICS nations have come out with in their declaration is a strong statement? This naming names as far as terror groups is concerned is definitely a move forward.
It is a big leap forward, I think, for us, because India had been lobbying at all multilateral fora for bringing out these skeletons from the cupboard that Pakistan has been hiding for a long time, and to make it a global norm to not accept this kind of state-sponsored terror. So the mention of Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba is especially significant because these are well-known proxies of the Pakistani intelligence establishment. I'm also happy to note that all the BRICS member countries have entered their own respective organizations of concern. For example, the East Turkestan and the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, these groups have been in the past linked to the Uyghur separatist movement in China, in Xinjiang province. So clearly the Chinese wanted their, quote-unquote, their terrorists to also be named as proscribed and as unacceptable. So I'm happy to also note, of course, the affiliates of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. One of them. So I think we have a situation of clarity now where there is greater unanimity among BRICS members, and it is a move forward because in the past the Chinese had been blocking any explicit mention of Pakistan-sponsored groups. So it's a setback for Pakistan diplomatically at least.
Right.
We have to see
but Dr. Chaulia, what about China's stand in terms of action? Yes, this is a move forward, as you said, because the naming of these terrorist groups is being seen as a major win for the BRICS grouping as a whole, especially for India. But when it comes to action, China takes a step back.
In fact, the proof of the pudding is in eating it, and we have to wait and see whether the declaration translates into coordinated action at the level of intelligence agencies. Will the Chinese share intelligence with us that will help us pinpoint the locations of some of these terrorist training camps inside Pakistani territory, for example, which belong to these banned groups like Lashkar and Jaish? Will the Chinese and the Russians assist us in tracking down the movements and the finances of these groups that often operate through Dubai and through the Middle East, where China has significant investments and also intelligence presence? This is where, we will need to convert. BRICS has a relatively good track record of converting the dreams into realities. So I think this is a good starting step, and we must carry it forward to its logical conclusion, which is, remember, when the US, for example, designates a country as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, it has tangible, concrete consequences, negative consequences for those targeted groups. So likewise, BRICS, it's a test of our relevance that we name them and we condemn them, and then what? We go after them. And I think that is what remains to be done.
All right, Dr. Chaulia, do stay with me. Here's more from the BRICS summit for our viewers. Well, before Xiamen declaration, Chinese Premier Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi earlier today addressed the plenary session of the summit. Speaking at the plenary session, Xi Jinping emphasized on the need of strengthening partnership among member nations. Xi Jinping also called for mutual trust between member countries Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa.
We need to stay focused on promoting results-oriented economic cooperation and expand converging interest in trade and investment, currency and finance, connectivity, sustainable development, innovation, and industrial cooperation. The past decade has seen the unremitting efforts of BRICS countries in pursuing development and deepening partnership. It is but a beginning in the history of BRICS cooperation.
Addressing the plenary session, Prime Minister Modi pitched for digital and Skill India campaigns. He also thanked President Xi for his warm reception and excellent organization of the summit. The Indian Prime Minister urged for early creation of the BRICS rating agency to cater to financing needs of sovereign and corporate entities of developing nations, appreciating thrust in people-to-people exchanges. The Prime Minister stated that such intermingling will consolidate links and deepen understanding between member nations.
BRICS has developed a robust framework for cooperation. We contribute stability and growth in a world difficultly drifting towards uncertainty. While trade and economy have been the foundation of our cooperation, our endeavors today touch diverse areas of technology, tradition, culture, agriculture, environment, energy, sports, and ICT. We are in mission mode to eradicate poverty, to ensure health, sanitation, skills, food security, gender equality, energy, education, and innovation. National programs of Clean Ganga, renewable energy, digital India, smart cities, housing for all, and Skill India are laying the basis for clean, green, and inclusive development. We have also stepped up the fight against black money, can help spur growth, promote transparency, and support the sustainable development goals. I would urge considering a collaborative pilot project under the BRICS framework, including private entrepreneurship. Finally, India would be happy to work towards more focused capacity building engagement between BRICS and African countries in areas of skills, health, infrastructure, manufacturing, and connectivity.
Going back to our guest on the show, Dr. Chaulia. Dr. Chaulia, what do you have to say about these messages, especially focusing on trade at the back of Donald Trump, who is propagating an America First policy? Is there a strong chance of the BRICS nations to make a statement of anti-protectionism and, against trade protectionism to come out and make that bold statement? Do you see that happening also side by side? Prime Minister Modi, his calls for separate ratings agency, do you see that happening?
Yes, the clouds around the liberal international order can only be dispelled if there is an important power center or a cluster of countries that is willing to stand up for it. And I think BRICS are making a stand. BRICS, it's in their self-interest not to allow closure of market access, especially in Western countries, in Europe, as well as in North America, to their exports. It's quite proven that the prosperity and development that Prime Minister Modi is talking about, a lot of these goals that we have as developing countries can only be achieved by keeping markets open for our producers. And I think that is going to be a very central message.
Fair
and
enough.
We are going to try and change the norm.
All right, Dr. Chaulia, we're completely running out of time, but thanks so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this.